Hey everybody, KMO here, and I listened to more of the book, "The Absent Empire," full title on the whiteboard, "The Shale Revolution and a World Without America" by Peter Zeihan, I think it is. And the bit that I was listening to this morning, it was the end of the chapter on what he calls the tanker war in Northeast Asia. Talking about the various rivalries and the competition for fossil fuel resources that will play out as a contest for naval supremacy in Northeast Asia. And Peter Zeihan thinks that China is screwed. He thinks Japan is facing a lot of pretty serious challenges, but that they have options that China doesn't. And one of the things that he talked about in the book was how, given their location, given their shared interests, there's a lot of reason and a lot to be gained for South Korea and Japan to work together, but they don't. And that's what I'm going to talk about in this video. Basically, I'm setting up a personal story. But before I get to the story, I was listening to NPR 2-3 weeks ago, and I heard a story about South Korea. And it was a South Korean official who was talking, South Korean. And he said that the United States likes to talk about a trilateral security arrangement in, East Asia. And what the Americans mean is the working partnership, three-way partnership between the United States, South Korea, and Japan. And this South Korean official was saying, that's bullshit. There are two bilateral relationships, the U.S. and South Korea, the U.S. and Japan. But there is no trilateral relationship because the South Koreans hate the Japanese. So first, to set up the story a little bit more, let me show you a photo. This is me in the early to mid 90s. I was living in Nagoya, Japan. I taught English, and you can see I have long hair. But when I went to teach English, I taught in corporate settings, I would slick back the hair with a hard gel, put on a suit and tie, and I looked, fairly respectable. But when I wasn't at work, I would break up the hard gel, the hair would fall in my face, and I would either wear a bandana, like a headcloth, and the guy on the far left in this photo is my landlord at the building where I lived, and he used to basically put on parties for everybody living in the building. And so he's quite drunk in the picture, as you can see. He's wearing something that I usually wore to keep the hair out of my face. Sometimes I also wore a headband. Well, I was teaching English in Japan, but I was just there on a tourist visa, and a tourist visa is good for 90 days. So every 3 months, I would have to jump on a plane, fly over to Seoul, South Korea, spend the night, and then come back. And just, arriving at the airport anew on an international flight, I get a new 3-month tourist visa. So I'm on one of these, jaunts over to Seoul. Now, it's very, very expensive to play golf in Japan. It's very cheap to fly from a Western Japanese city over to South Korea and play golf there. You can do that much more cheaply than you can play golf in Japan. So lots of Japanese businessmen who like to discuss business on the golf course will fly over to Seoul for the day with their golf bags, golf, get drunk, and fly home at night, and get drunk some more. And so I'm on a flight. I'm one of the only Americans on the flight. We go over to Japan, and we go over to South Korea, land in Seoul, and I'm standing in this long line of Japanese businessmen with their golf bags. And they were really meticulous with their clubs. Every club in the bag is wrapped in plastic and taped up. So they have to go through customs. The customs guys like to fuck with the Japanese. So there's this long line of Japanese businessmen there to play golf, and the customs guys, their job is to keep them waiting in line at the airport to clear customs for as long as possible to minimize the amount of time they get to spend on the golf course. So the customs guys, working the South Korean airport workers would make each Japanese businessman take each individual club out of his bag. They had a box knife, and they would cut open the plastic, and they would inspect every single golf club, and I'm near the back of this line, and I think, oh my God, I'm going to be here for hours. So here I am. I'm not wearing my suit and tie. I'm dressed in my civilian clothes, and I've got my hair out of my eyes with a headband. And this South Korean customs official comes walking down the line. And, he's looking at all these Japanese businessmen, giving each one of them the stink eye. And he gets to me and he stops. And he looks at my customs declaration. And I was a smartass. And on the customs declaration, I said that my occupation was philosopher. So he looks at that and he says, occupation, philosopher? I said, yes, sir. And then he points at my headband. He says, what is this? And maybe figuring it's some sort of gang something. I don't know. And I said, it keeps the hair out of my eyes. And he laughs and he pulls me out of the line and he sends me on through. I don't even have to go through customs. And all these Japanese businessmen are standing there in this long line, having each individual golf club pulled out of the bag, having the plastic cut open, and the South Korean customs officials inspecting each one just to be a pain in the ass, just because they hate the Japanese. So that is my the Koreans really hate the Japanese story, as seen by my young self. Talk to you tomorrow.